know some of the things that we go through living in a Latin American country, and hopefully we'll hear him talk to us in Spanish today. So I'd like to introduce to you the Senator of Virginia, Governor.
Thank you all very much. It's good to be with you. We'll talk a little bit in English and a little bit in Spanish. My Spanish is okay, having lived in Honduras a while ago, 30 years now. Yo trabajé como misionero con las jesuitas allá, enseñé carpintería y soldadura en la escuela vocacional a jóvenes. Y en 1980 yo aprendí bastante de español allá, pero también muchas cosas de la cultura latina. Y durante mi tiempo en Virginia, por 27 años he trabajado con la comunidad, primero como alcalde en Richmond y también como gobernador. Y si Dios quiere, como senador también. I have been doing town hall meetings, roundtable meetings with groups of citizens all over Virginia. And I think, Tyrone? 62. 62. This is 62. We began the first weekend in January, and we've been doing, groups of probably no fewer than 10 and no more than about 50, where we talk about issues affecting the Commonwealth. We've met with Latino leaders, we met with veterans, we met with women business owners, we met with unemployed veterans, all over the Commonwealth, every part of the state. Because I want to share, particularly about the economy, I'd like to share some thoughts about the national economy and what we can do to make the economy stronger, thoughts that I think are based on lecciones aquí en Virginia. Durante mi tiempo como gobernador y alcalde, aprendí un poquito de desarrollo de la economía, and I'll talk a bit about that. Some strategies, 3 strategies, growth strategies, what do we do right now to add jobs and grow the economy? Second, what do we do to be the most talented place on earth? In some ways, this is the thing I'm most fascinated by. We need to grow now, but big picture, long term, our growth is really going to depend on having an economía de talento, economía talentosa, and it is something I feel very passionate about. And third, I want to talk about balance budgets, but also balance in our politics, and why Washington seems broken because people won't listen to each other and work together. So with that, I'm very happy to be here, Maribel, and again, thank you for hosting, and we'll jump in. So growth. We know the economy in 2009, it was shrinking, it's now growing. It was shrinking at more than 5% a year. Está creciendo ahorita. We also know that we were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month, and we're now adding them. We knew that the stock market was about in the 7,000s, it's now in the 12,000s. So while the direction has turned, we also know that we've got a long way to go. Too many people without employment, too many people who are employed but not employed really at the level that they should be, and so we've got a lot of challenges. The couple of things I think we could do as a nation right now and that we should do to grow the economy, let me just get into them. I'm a big believer in infrastructure. I think if you build roads, rail, public transit, schools, renovate homes to make them energy efficient, renovate school buildings, broadband deployment. If you build from an infrastructure standpoint, it's about the best thing you can do right away because you hire people immediately. And then you're raising the platform of success, and then you get to enjoy those roads and bridges and rail assets for 50 years. One of the projects I worked on very hard when I was governor was the Rail to Dulles project. Very tough project, and it's still tough. There's challenges every day to work out, but it had been on a drawing board for 20 años. Nobody was able to do anything with it. It was just on a drawing board. No shovels of earth, nobody hired. And I made a pledge when I got into being governor that I was going to leave and it was going to be being built, and it is. And hundreds of people have had jobs on it, and it's being built. And it's going to do significant things to benefit the region, benefit the airport, which is a huge part of our economic success. And I did other projects like that when I was governor around Virginia, but I really believe that's very, very important. So there's a transportation bill pending right now in Congress that looks like the Senate is going to reach a bipartisan deal on it. The House should pass that right away when you put people to work, unless they're not interested in putting people to work. But if they're interested in putting people to work, they should pass it. The second thing that we need to do, and I think this might resonate with some in the room, is if we want to grow the economy right away, then let's help the job creators. And the job creators are small businesses.
When people talk about the job creators, I sometimes listen to them and I think that, they're talking about ExxonMobil or something. That's not the job creators. The job creators are small businesses. And there's not a level playing field for small businesses. So there are probably many in this room who are in small businesses that pay federal corporate income tax. The GE doesn't pay federal corporate income tax. Other major companies don't. They have lobbyists that are good enough or savvy enough, they can figure out a way to tax minimize, and it's all legal. I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything illegal about this, but we have a system, a tax system that is weighted against small businesses. And whether it's taxes or government procurement policies or who government assists in doing export assistance, or whether it's ability to get loans for small businesses, again and again, probably one of the things I hear most as I travel around is that small businesses having trouble getting access to capital, access to loans. So the second thing we could do, in addition to infrastructure, if we want to grow the economy, is focus on leveling the playing field for small businesses. Those are what I would do right away. Senator Warner has a bill in right now called the Startup Act that is getting some attention. It's focused on small business issues in an important way. The second issue I want to talk to you about is talent, and this is the one that I care the most about, really, because I think it's so transformative. And it starts with a good news story that's a Virginia story, but sort of a bad news story that's a national story. Yo tengo 54 años. Cuando nací, Virginia era un estado muy pobre. 38 la nación en income. Ingreso familiar, family income, 38 in the nation. Ahorita somos 7. Número 7 en la nación. Y en 54 años no ha estado moved, transformed, movido.
Se ha transformado.
Ya ha transformado como nosotros. Entonces, si vamos a mejorar la economía nacional, debemos aprender una lección o dos de Virginia, ¿verdad? Porque we're the only state that's gone from back of the pack to front of the pack in 54 years. So what do we do to do that? Well, I maintain that while there are a number of things we did, the main thing we did was we decided to become the talent state, to really go after talent. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I was born, the state was closing schools down rather than let kids learn together if their skin colors were different. In fact, entire counties in Virginia closed schools down rather than let kids learn together if their skin colors were different. Up until the 1970s, women couldn't go to the University of Virginia, and until some of our state universities even later than that. So talent wasn't the virtue. If you lived in rural Virginia, there wasn't a community college system, so after high school, it would be very difficult to get higher ed. But what we've done, this generation of Virginians, you in this room, is we've knocked the barriers down. So we've opened up the doors of education. For women, for minorities, we've built up the community college system, 350,000 students in community college right now. We grew talent, and we attracted talent from around the nation and around the world. I wasn't born in Virginia. Raise your hand if you were not born in Virginia. Well, that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty healthy number. Well, if I asked that question and no hands went up, it would mean one thing: we were doing something wrong. But we're doing something right. So we grew talent, then we attracted talent. More than 2/3 of the population growth in Virginia in the last decade was Latino, Asian American, and African American. And often in the African American growth, it was naturalized Africans who have come to Virginia. We are a vastly internationalizing population, and that's been part of our talent story. So educational institutions, talented people come here, and then what we see is once you grow talent and attract talent, then you attract businesses that want to be around talent. As you know, even in a tough recession, when I was governor, Virginia was Forbes' most business-friendly state all 4 years, and we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States. We had this interesting thing happen when I was governor. It was the worst recession since the 1930s, but companies kept announcing they were moving their headquarters to Virginia, even in the middle of a recession. Hilton, Midwest Vaco, SAIC, CSC, Volkswagen of North America, Northrop Grumman, and these are just the headquarters moves. There's all kinds of other investments that are being made. And I worked on these deals, and I worked with these companies, and I asked them, once the negotiation was over, They had other states they could have chosen. So why Virginia? And what they told me was a number of things, but the main thing they told me was, well, other states put more dollars on the table than Virginia did. But we had a confidence that if we opened our doors tomorrow, we would have the obreros that we would need to be successful. And if we opened 25 years from now, we had the confidence that we would have the people we needed to be successful. So what I take from that, the good news Virginia story is, win the talent race, win the economic race. Grow talent, attract talent, have talent strategies, and you win the economic race. That's la clave al desarrollo de la economía. Well, on the national side, we're going the other way. So nationally, America was #1 in the world because of the GI Bill after World War II. We rocketed ahead of every nation in the world in the percentage of adults who had some kind of a degree after high school. Could be an instituto técnico or a universidad or community college, but some kind of a degree after high school, we're #1 in the world. Today, if you look at the 20 to 30-year-olds, and this is the group, this is the time in life where most people will get that degree, if they get a degree, we're 16th in the world. And we're slipping. So we kind of grew and then we flattened and we're declining, but other nations are still climbing, so we're 16th in the world today, but we'll be 25th in 10 years or 30th in 15 years. And I really believe it's so very important that if we fix everything else, balance the budget, energy policy, if we fix everything else, but we keep slipping on the talent side, we're not going to like the opportunities we have. So what we have to do, and what I would like to do in the Senate is I would really like to be kind of a talent expert. I want to focus on education, expanded early childhood education, which is huge. K-12, we have to wrestle with No Child Left Behind and figure out the right next step forward to make our K-12 schools stronger. We have to make higher ed more affordable. We're having all these debates right now about Stafford loan interest rates and Pell Grants, but financial aid is one thing, but there's a bigger issue than financial aid, which is just the overall cost. How can we hold costs down? We have to do that. We have to do comprehensive immigration reform. I'm a huge believer that la reforma del sistema de leyes de inmigración no es primeramente un asunto de la frontera, es un asunto de talento. It's got to be a talent issue. People think about immigration reform, the border. We ought to think immigration reform, we want to be the most talented place on earth. We want to have the kinds of policies where talented, dedicated people will want to make the United States the place where they can succeed, just has always been the case since the English came to Jamestown Island in 1607. I mean, the English came as new Americans to Jamestown Island because they were talented people and they wanted to explore opportunities. That's been the story of Virginia, the story of the nation, and so we need to think about immigration reform in that way. I'm a huge supporter of the DREAM Act. I was very, very happy when the President made his announcement, I guess it's now 3 Fridays back, about stopping deportations and enabling students to be here. It's really important. We youngsters who are here, we would not want to lock them into being underachievers. We would want to enable them to be overachievers. I think we need visa reform so that students who come here who get degrees, we want to, if they want, we would love them to be able to stay here and create opportunities here rather than take their knowledge that they gained at our universities and go elsewhere. If they want to go back to their homes, that's fine too, but we shouldn't chase them away if they have the ability to start jobs and grow opportunities. More than of the Fortune 500 companies today, more than 200 of the CEOs are either immigrants or children of immigrants. So the immigrant waves into the United States have been economic powerhouse. It's been one of the reasons why the U.S. has been the most dynamic economy in the world, the largest economy in the world since 1890. It's been because of that success of rejuvenation with ideas and skills from new Americans. So the second thing I really want to work on, and that I think we need to work on economically, is we can't keep slipping on the talent race. We've got to win it. We've got to return to #1 in the world. Last thing, let me just say a word about balance in politics, and then I'd love to open it up. If you turn on TV now, there's so much discussion about deficits and the need to find a balance. So we have a budget of right now, it's about $3.6 trillion a year. And we're taking in $2.3 trillion in taxes. So that gap, $1.3 trillion a year, that's the deficit that gets added onto the national debt every year. And that's just not sustainable. We've got to close that gap. And I know something about it. I'm the only governor in the modern history of Virginia who left office with a smaller budget, general fund budget, than when I started. because I was governor during a horrible recession, so I had to make a whole lot of cuts. I had to cut $5 billion out of the state budget. I started with my own salary. And cut and cut and cut. I was cutting 6 months into my first year. I was cutting my last day in office, and every day between, trying to find ways to deal with this recession. And I learned some things about balancing, and I learned some things about cuts. I learned how to do it. I also learned how not to do it. I learned that you don't cut things across the board because everything isn't worth everything else. Education, probably ought to be doing more in education. If we're going to do that, we're going to have to find some cuts elsewhere. But I also learned this, and it's really important. No puedo tener éxito solo cartando. Imposible. It's impossible to cut your way to success. No business has ever cut their way to prosperity. No family ever has. If you're not investing along the way too, a business will invest in a new computer system, or will decide to hire some new employees. A family will invest in a college savings account or a retirement account. You've got to be cutting, but you also need to be investing. And if you're ever not investing, you're making a big mistake. So the way I like to say it kind of jokingly is, when I look in the mirror, I always want to be thinner, but I never want to be weaker. I want to be thin, but I don't want to just shrink down and be feeble. And an all-cut approach to dealing with the budget will make us feebler, especially in Virginia, where we are so connected to spending at the federal level. If we just start, cutting, well, what about folks on veterans' pensions? And what about, employees who live in this community, who work for, the DOD or the EPA? We shouldn't just be cutting. So I would suggest that we have to make cuts, and I know how to make them. I've had to do it. The opponent that I'm running against, that's never been anything he's really had to do. But I also know that we've got to find more revenues to put into the system to have robust Pell Grant programs, and so that we don't have to devastate Medicare. It's hugely important that we don't devastate Medicare, as some would propose. So those are sort of three big pictures on the economy. We've got to have the growth strategies, infrastructure, level the playing field for small businesses. We've got to be the most talented place on earth, and we've got to come at this fiscal issue the right way. The last thing I'll say is we also have to be balanced, not just in our budgets, but in our politics. It's a time of a lot of anger and division. I have been in elected office for 16 and a half years. And I will say that I think there's more sort of anger and division and divisiveness than any time I've ever seen in politics. And I see people pledging, from the first day the president is inaugurated, our main goal as our party is to not let him have a second term. Instead of pledging to create jobs or do other things, I see those kinds of things. I see other kinds of behaviors among people in the political class that suggest that they don't want to listen to each other. I've had to work in some interesting areas where I've learned a lot about other kinds of people. It was a real blessing en trabajar en Honduras. Por primera vez en mi vida, viajando a un otro país, un otro idioma, una otra cultura, y a trabajar con gente que son diferentes, era muy importante a mí aprender cómo a trabajar juntos con otros. When I was mayor in Richmond, the city of Richmond, about 60+% African American. I was not chosen to be mayor because I had been there the longest or because I knew the most, but people thought I was a good listener and a good umpire, and that I could get people around the table and help find a path forward. And then I was governor, and I had 2 Republican houses, my first 2 years, and 1 each my second 2. We were the best managed state in America, the best state to raise a child, best state for business, not because of me, but because of the work that we did together. And I'll go into the Senate with that attitude that if it's not together, if we can't trabajar juntos, then no vale la pena. We can have whatever ideas we want. We can have the best ideas in the world. But if they just are going to sit on a subcommittee shelf because no one will agree with each other, then it doesn't matter whether the ideas are good or not. So fundamentally, this is a matter of cooperación because, somos virginianos todos, somos americanos todos, y debemos trabajar juntos. And with that, Maribel, it's good to be with you, and I've spoken just to get folks' wheels turned, and so what I'd love to do now is open it up, take questions, take suggestions, and thank you again for letting me be a few minutes late.
I just wanted to
And if you could introduce yourself when you ask.
Yeah, I'm Cristina Caballero, president of Dialogue on Diversity. And we run an organization of women entrepreneurs,
Excellent.
20 years old, around the Washington metro area. But I had a chance very briefly to meet you many years ago with Cindy Benitez at one of our conferences at NEA. I just want to thank you for bringing us all together to talk to you. There's so many questions in our minds, you know, about what's happening in our community. And I guess the most important part that we would like to see if we can do something about is the divisiveness within our communities and also between the politics, mostly the politics, I think. Our community, I think, knows what we need and what we want, except that we don't know quite how to do it because there's so many things that are getting us from where we need to go, you know? So I know it's a very, what do you call it, overall kind of question, but I think the politics is the biggest issue for us.
Yeah. Well, let me say a word about the Latino community and then bigger picture division and how we work together. I mean, the growth of the Latino community has been a very good thing in Virginia. It's been a very good thing for a whole lot of reasons. I mean, the community is a great community of, you know, hard work and family and faith and with wonderful cultural aspects. Virginia also, you know, to some degree, we were kind of stuck looking backward as a state, and we had to kind of turn forward. And the more our state internationalizes, and the more we realize we not only have a Dulles Airport that connects us internationally, and a Port of Hampton roads that connect us internationally, but we have people who are all touch points with international connections around the globe. That has a way of taking Virginia and really having us focus forward, because global connections are a key to success in the 21st century. So the Latino community has added a lot for that reason. We got to do more in a couple of areas. I think it's important, just in my line of work, it's important for more Latinos to be in elected office. So I was real happy when one of my staffers, when I was governor, Alfonso Lopez, was elected as the first Latino in the legislature. That was great, but you know, much more work to do in that area, because the wonderful thing about elected office is then people are visible. That's a role model. That's great. That's something I could do. There's no reason to have ceiling on what I think I might be able to do. That person can accomplish something. And again, whether, you know, the owners of small businesses or people in the professions or people in philanthropic, you know, organizations like yours, or an elected office, we just need more, you know, people there setting the standard and being the role models.
I have a question. I know that we need to elect more Latinos, but and there is a buzz about Rubio being considered for vice presidency. Can you tell us why we shouldn't vote for him? I can tell you, but I think it's nice to be reminded, even though we want Latinos. Why shouldn't we get him?
You're going to hear that I'm going to be a real good politician. But I think I would rather not do that. I mean, we'll see. It'll be how it's meant to be. I have no control over that.
See me later.
And I have no control over that. But the one thing I do think, you know, when we're talking about issues of, for example, immigration, you know, just look at who is advancing good policies. Now, we advance policies, some as Democrats, and the President too, that we can't convince Republicans to vote for. And sadly, there are even policies that in the past had many Republican sponsors who then had to back away during the Republican presidential debate. You saw there were some candidates running for president on the Republican side who had very actually good moderate immigration records, but during the course of the race, they all had to disclaim their record, say they changed their mind, pledge to veto the DREAM Act, as Mitt Romney said that he would. And even in the aftermath of the president's announcement on the DREAMer solution, Marco Rubio couldn't find it within his heart to praise that, and said, you know, finds fault with that. But at the end of the day, you know, it is the premise of your question is right. It's not just about electing people because of their characteristics. You got to elect people who have policies that have your interests at heart. Yeah, please. Sir.
One of the things, my name is Carlos Labios. I've been living in Prince William County for 31 years. I'm a member of Prince William County Human Rights Commission, and I've seen discrimination for many years, many kind of discrimination. One of the things that I've come to the conclusion is divisiveness is part of the history of the United States. Every wave of immigrant that has come to the United States has been kicked in the butt.
Yeah.
The Chinese, they had to go on the ground and make their own cities, and they were laborers to train. The Czechs had the same problem. But what happens is every group that becomes part of the American society remembers how they were kicked. So they said, okay, we were kicked in the behind when we came, so now it's time for us to kick the new wave. And one of the problems I have seen with the Hispanic community is, the Hispanic community is not a wave, it's an ocean of immigrants. And a lot of people in this country are afraid of change. I'm from Puerto Rico. I've been asked time and time again, what part of Mexico are you from? So my answer is quite simple.
Or you'll
I'm
say,
from the Caribbean part.
Or you'll even say, I'm from Puerto Rico, and they'll say, well, when did you come to America?
Puerto Rico. Well, a funniest thing, I was stopped by an officer one time, and he asked for my green card. I almost got arrested because I gave him my video card, which is green. And he said a few choice words, and he was going to arrest me. And my wife, the first thing she said, good, that's what you get for being a smart, you know what. But one of the things is, we have to listen to what these people are saying. They're afraid of change. And if we try to shove change down their throat, it gets in their throat and they vomit it out and they won't accept it. Change is difficult, and we have to understand that for people that have been, I've been living in Prince William County for 31 years. In the beginning, when I spoke Spanish to my wife, they looked funny at me, and after a while they started saying, and now after a while when my wife cooks food and they smell it in the neighborhood, they come to my house to ask me stupid questions because they want to have some of the food.
Well, you touched a couple of questions. First, the no Irish need a fly signs. There was that. I mean, that's my background is Irish, and it is the case that different ways of those moving in this country have experienced that, and yet, change is hard. Change is hard in other ways, any kind of change, there's going to be a resistance to it. But I see, I'll tell you something that I see as I travel around. I see a Virginia that, again, in my lifetime, was closing schools down rather than let kids learn together if their skin colors were different. I see the increase in Latino populations all over Virginia. If you go to Galax, Virginia, down on nearly on the North Carolina border, you're going to see stores that have signage only in Spanish. So I see this happening all over the state, and I actually see a state, in almost all instances, sort of adjusting to it and kind of reaching an accommodation, not like we would have done it 50 years ago. Now, again, I know that there's been a lot of controversy in Prince William, and policies at the local level have been highly controversial, and I would say that's not been the norm in 135. There's 135 cities and counties. The Prince William experience had not been the norm in the others, even though the populations of Latinos in other jurisdictions are growing up too. So not that it's an easy thing, because change is hard, but I'm seeing it work, the change, people adjusting to and embracing change in a very much more positive way around these issues than would have been the case a generation ago.
I believe that we have to adjust to them as much as they have to adjust to us. And when they ask me what part of Mexico you're from, I tell them the Caribbean part. And when they ask me I said Puerto Rico is a part of Mexico. So what? I don't care. But what happens is it takes an adjustment on both sides. For example, I remember in 2007 when I was a chairperson of the committee fighting this anti-immigration law that they passed in 2007, the chairperson of Board of County Supervisors checked me out. And when I was debating with him on WTOP, I was debating against him. When we had a break, he came to me, he says, hey, you were part of the presidential escort unit. You worked for President Reagan, and you got all these awards. And I asked him, did you check me out? I said, yeah. And I checked you out, and he says, you speak perfect English. Why are you supporting these people? And so my answer was, as a joke, I said, I not only speak English and Spanish, I speak French and German. How many languages do you speak? It's a give and take.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Jaramillo, and I live in Foster County, but a little teeny tiny bit of my 7-acre farm is in Prince William. So, and I've lived here since 1994. And when I started living here, we had, I don't think we had any Spanish language stores, and but my family comes from New Mexico. So sometimes I get from Latinos, because I don't speak Spanish, and because I grew up on military bases, sometimes people go, oh, you're not Latino. And I'm like, I have tamales at Christmas time. Okay, I have pozole for New Year's.
How long had your family been in New Mexico? Like hundreds of years?
My family's been in New Mexico since the dawn of whatever happened.
Yeah.
Some came from Spain. Yeah. Some came from Spain. Some were Native Americans. But I mean, in New Mexico, we don't talk about when did you get here, because we've all been there. But my mother was blonde hair and blue eyes, which my grandmother was not happy about. That my father married a gringa, but she got over it as the grandchildren arrived. But so I'm here, and I was thrilled when the changes started happening in Prince William County, because I could get my masa, and I could get my corn husks, and I could get everything. But I saw what happened here over time, and it hurt me terribly. And I've been at session, the last 2 sessions, fighting against the anti-immigration bills that they were trying to get through. The first year, the Democrats killed them all. And this year, interestingly enough, the Republicans killed them all. Okay? Because I don't think they wanted to go through this election year with those hanging on them. Okay? Because you all are now making yourselves known. And so I want you to know that you are making an impression, and you are making a difference here, because Tommy Norman, who is the majority leader, he killed those anti-immigration bills. Now the Democrats helped. I mean, the Democrats worked hard. They did it, but the Republicans killed them this year.
And Rebecca, let me just add to that, because this is a little surprise. When I was governor, and at the end of my campaign for governor, there were 2 negative ads that the other side ran against me, and one was, Kaine will be soft on illegal immigrants. They crank that ad up, and it's like they just substitute a new candidate, and they run the same ad that they ran that ad. And so I got elected, and I thought, okay, well, I'm probably going to have to deal. I had 2 Republican houses. I'm probably going to have to deal with some bad bills coming out of the state legislature getting to my desk that I'm going to have to veto. In 4 years as governor, I don't recall ever once having to veto a bad bill on immigration issues, even when I had 2 Republican houses. Because, again, this isn't the case everywhere, and I know that there's been a painful history here, but what I saw in my state legislature is even the Republican legislators look at the changing face of Virginia, and they say, look, why pretend that we're a state that we're not? We're a different kind of a state now. We have to be more open. And so they didn't even, whether it was for political reasons or whatever, they didn't even get any bills on my desk. And so that was bipartisan, which was a good sign, I thought.
Right, and I just want to close with here in Manassas and Prince William, we have a lot of small businesses, and I've done a lot of grassroots work here for different campaigns for the last 4 years for Obama and state levels. And one thing that I hope when I look around this room, because this is a fabulous group. I don't think I've seen a group this diverse in all the grassroots work that I'm doing. I would love to be able to reach some of those small businesses and try to reach a lot of people to work for Governor Kaine, because I think he's probably one of the best candidates for our community that has come around in a long, long time. And so I really hope that we can reach a lot of those people who perhaps haven't voted in a long time, because I think he's probably going to be one of the best candidates for our community, and probably a senator. I love Senator Webb, and I love Senator Warner, but I think this is a unique time for us to reach out to our community and engage a lot of those people with the president on the ballot, and with Senator Kaine, Governor Kaine, soon to be Senator Kaine, on the ballot. So I really hope that we'll reach some of those small businesses, and we'll reach some of those Latinos and Hispanics in Prince William, and let them know this is a very special man, and this is a very special opportunity for our community.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank
you. Please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Salvador Zamora, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I would like to say that I came here to see you, but I was around and hungry. I'm an activist, and I found out a few years ago that we as a community are very divided. So we started a movement to try to get together all the immigrants and Latinos, and we've been very successful. So we can organize and try to elect people that help us. So I started a walk that lasted 8 months from California all the way to here.
Wow.
I was in 2010. And lately, we did a hunger strike in Atlanta, Georgia against HB 87. And we accomplished a lot of things there. And now we are in another project, another adventure. We're going to Arizona to try to take Arpaio down from
The sheriff.
Yes. My question is, it looks like you support the community, and so you think that you give us your word that if we have a immigration reform, you're gonna support it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you what I think we need to do on immigration. So I'll tell you what I think reform is, and I'd love to dialogue about that. I mean, and there's a lot of different pieces of reform, but I'll just kind of talk about what I think are the 3 big ones. One, I'm strongly pro-DREAM Act, and I would support DREAM Act legislation standalone or as part of a broader immigration package. For the reason I said earlier, I just think if children are here and their parents brought them, we would want them to succeed and thrive and rather than be locked into an underachiever status. So that's number one. Number two, there's a lot of different visa reforms that I think we need to make. So the students who are here who want to stay and succeed, we should make it easier for them to do it. We need visa reforms to make it easier for people who want to travel and visit the United States. I mean, it is so difficult to come be a tourist in the United States compared to going elsewhere. And tourism and travel is a big part of the national economy, but we make it much tougher than other nations do. So we need that as part of visa reform. But the big challenging issue is the fate of those sin documentos, and what do you do about the undocumented? We're not going to deport 12 million people, you know. So there's no way that that's going to happen, and people don't want it to happen. So what I would suggest on that, if I were just writing the bill myself, what I would like to do is I would have a penalty for being here without documents, because a lot of people, you know, follow the rules and do it the right way, and we shouldn't disadvantage them. I would have it be a financial penalty that people would, you know, say, look, okay, I came here illegally, I'm going to bear this financial penalty. I can work, I can pay that financial penalty off over some period of time, 2 or 3 years. Once I do, then I can regularize my immigration status, you know, get a green card. And then you would use the money you would raise from those penalties to do more border security. You know, that is I think a straightforward, fair practice that would enable people to find a path to getting a green card, that wouldn't unrealistically talk about deportation, which we're never going to do. For somebody to say, well, I hope people will self-deport, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So that, as I think about reform, I've been public in support of reform. I would support a reform of that kind. And immigration, and I would work on it.
Just to close, because my understanding and the majority of people that I know is that as Democrats, they are trying to help us, and as Republicans, they are trying to make our lives harder. So my understanding was that we have to support the majority of Democrats on Congress, but I'm trying to consider listening to you talking, that we may choose people from both parties to help us with our immigration reform.
I think you should ask the question, and if you get an answer you like, then you should support that person. Look, there are Republicans who support a similar strategy. There are Republicans who used to sign up to be sponsors of these bills, and for some reason they backed away, but we can still get them. And immigration reform, I'll tell you, it shouldn't be a partisan issue, because the Chamber of Commerce wants immigration reform, the Farm Bureau and Agricultural Interests want immigration reform, La Raza y los otros grupos que trabajan con los nuevos americanos quieren reforma del sistema. So there's right, left, and center. Maybe not extreme right, but right, left, and center want immigration reform. So it shouldn't really be a partisan issue. Thank you. Yeah. Please.
I'm Robert Alvarez. And, you know, I'm a civil engineer. I've been working here for years since 1990. And I've last 15 years I've worked with some pretty big general contractors, which had some very big projects here in Virginia. One of the biggest ones I worked on was down at Fort Belvoir building a hospital.
Oh, sure.
But what I see in
That's where that hospital, the BRAC hospital.
exactly, part of the whole BRAC line.
Yeah.
But what I see in construction is a huge percentage of Hispanic workers in construction, as opposed to I did a job in West Virginia a couple years ago, $48 million job, not one Hispanic on the job site. But here in Virginia, and in Maryland and DC, huge construction influence in the Spanish community. It sort of seem to all be working and focusing. And I know they're working on all these other industries, but at the beginning you talked about your 3 different plans as far as talent and balance, but you also mentioned about bringing the infrastructure here in Virginia right away. I know it's not the long-term plan, but it'll actually get jobs created right away with jobs and housing markets for all these realtors. It's important. So what do you see becoming a senator in the next term, how quickly you can secure work for Virginia in terms of another hospital, another road expansion, the metro rail like you did when you were governor?
Well, it's funny. I worked really hard on phase 1 of the metro, and one of the things that I was able to do as governor, and look, this was working with the Bush administration. This was cooperation, Democrat to Republican. We got $900 million for phase 1, and if we hadn't gotten that, we wouldn't be building phase 1. We had state and local money in it too. Well, now the whole question is, what about phase 2? So, you know, if I get into the Senate, maybe that will have already been resolved. But if it isn't resolved, I'm going to work very hard to make sure that there's federal funding in phase 2 as well. As governor, we pushed $1 billion for bond package to do construction on the community colleges in 4 years. So, you know, Nova and George Mason, all over the state, we're doing construction on college campuses to add more classrooms and labs. And I'd be looking to do the same thing at the federal level. And then also, I hope this transportation bill is going to get resolved soon, because it's just a perfect way. The way I describe it is infrastructure is like a double, because you hire people today, but then you have an infrastructure tomorrow that you can enjoy carretero o puente por 50 o 60 años. And so it's it's a wonderful way to invest in the economy short-term and long-term. So focusing on infrastructure spending.
Is there any stimulus money still available? I know there was a lot of talk of that when Obama came in, and a lot of money went to St. Elizabeth for the new
and in Virginia, over near where your hospital project was, we used stimulus dollars to complete the Fairfax Parkway near the engineer proving grounds portion of Fort Belvoir, the BRAC, the federal agency, the Defense Geospatial Intelligence Agency that wasn't far from where you were. That Fairfax Parkway was improved with stimulus dollars. I don't know today, sitting here today, whether any of the Recovery Act dollars for infrastructure were programmed but haven't been used in Virginia. We did a ton of wastewater treatment plants and road and bridge improvements like Fairfax Parkway. But I mean, sadly, I think stimulus is a word that not everybody likes, but transportation infrastructure, nobody doesn't like that. So it's probably the kind of thing that we would do is we would focus on, very focused, like transportation infrastructure bill. But again, that's also talked about immigration reform, transportation, nonpartisan. For the transportation bill, the key lobbyists for it right now, U.S. Chamber of Commerce and labor unions. They're usually not together, but they're together on, we do infrastructure spending, we're going to hire people, and we're going to help our economy out. So, yeah, please, your hand, go ahead.
My name is Gaudencio Fernandez. Mr. Kaine, I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak to you today among all these wonderful people. I would like to make 2 suggestions in regard to economical situation that we're going through and education. For myself, it's been very important to think that many of us that came from the South, regardless Mexico, South and Central America, it is now a mystery for everybody that the lack of education of the majority of our people, like myself, I didn't even finish junior high, and just like me, there's many other people. And the majority, we came and found jobs on construction or other type of work that doesn't need this high level education profession. Today, many of them, they suffer from not having work, regardless if they are documented or undocumented. For me, it would be important to say that it might be a good idea from the government of Virginia to invest money to create programs to educate these people. At the same time, you keep them raising the level of knowledge to find a new profession. And you keep these people busy, but also creating new professionals for tomorrow. That would be something that I would say that will help the economy to improve, investing money into creating programs to educate this level of people, yes, I would say, like myself. Another thing that also I would like to see that is very important for me, the future is education. It is very important for me to say that I went to many schools, middle schools, high schools, and I noticed that parents who doesn't have documents don't have the opportunity to go and see their children at school. Many of these kids get in trouble. They do, or sometimes they don't, because myself, I suffer one situation just like that one with my oldest son. And they don't have the opportunity to go and really see if their children are getting into those situations or not. However, as you know, in Virginia, a child that's supposed to commit these errors or crimes can be marked for the rest of his life, can be thrown from school, and that's another way that we're pushing our children away from the opportunity of education. For me, to say, and many parents that I spoke in our community, we would like to see that something is done. Well, today or tomorrow, you will be able to do something about that, and I would like that. That is focusing to that because, again, the education will be the key of it.
I mean, I think as Gaudencia said, when I was talking about growth, talent, and balance, for me, the talent strategies are the ones that are the most important because they're the ones that most determine how we stack up against global competitors. And you've all seen the charts, you know, with someone who does not have a high school degree, their average earnings are here. If it's a high school degree, it's here. It's community college, it's here. It's college, it's here. And there will be some college students who won't do that, and there will be some high school students that are dramatically successful. But the average is, the more education you can attain, the stronger you'll be. One of the reasons I worked very hard as governor to expand early childhood education. So even though I had to cut the state budget by $5 billion, and the state budget was smaller when I left than when I started, there were thousands more